gonna take me a second. I don't know why I didn't come in here and set up, and instead I frolicked and lollygagged.
I think we're on.
And now here we are.
No, we're live.
The public knows I'm a frolicker and a lollygagger sometimes.
Well, since we are the public.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the June 26, 2024 Oshtemo Charter Township Board meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and at this time I invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have a member of the board that would be willing to read one of the township's mission, vision, and core values to center our conversations?
Public service is one of our core values, and we say decisions are made based on the value to our township and residents.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
This time we'll move to item number 4, which is public comment. John, do we have anybody online?
Oh, we do not.
Okay, and do we have anyone in the public wishing to make comment this evening? Welcome.
Thank you.
I'll get to meet these fine folks here in a second. So this evening, our clerk and our treasurer will be presenting their accomplishments, goals, and visions. Supervisor's office will get hers next. It occurred to me that I have to do the police, the ordinance enforcement.
Somebody has to say.
It's me.
I have 3 others I have to do, so I didn't want to do it half, so I just am going to go at another date. So with that, Clerk Farmer, are you ready?
I'm getting there.
Okay, no rush.
Oh,
I
I'm rushing.
mean, kind
I
of.
mean, there's a rush.
There's not a rush. It's not a rush. You could introduce your staff while you're thumbing around on your screen.
No, focus on
Jay,
what you're
I'm
doing.
not sure why you think I could do that.
Please don't try to introduce people.
I never claim that. Okay, I can just do it, John?
Oh. Just don't look behind you. Not the camera.
Look behind, I can see behind me, I can see myself.
I am just so tempted to snap a photo, you don't even know.
There's so many Dusties in
There's
this.
many
Like
dusties in
the
this.
thing, do bunny ears.
Oh, good, it's from my most flattering angle, too. That's fantastic.
Testing out the new equipment.
Oh, when can I just share this so that I don't have to keep looking at myself?
Don't, take your time.
Everybody that presents has to wear horse blinders.
I don't like it when you can see on my slides. All right.
We'll just push it, there you go, push it to play.
All right, so here is Melissa Rugg. She is the assistant clerk and then also the deputy clerk. Her focus is accounts payables, cemeteries, and elections. Yeah. And anything else. And then we have Carrie Tyler, who is the clerk's assistant, and she is our election specialist and records clerk. Thank you for being here. I didn't ask them to be here, they wanted to be here, and that's fantastic. I appreciate it very much. So, I'm trying something new this year. I would like to begin creating an annual report of some of the things that we do, because I think some of the numbers are really interesting when you look at them after the year is over and you see what you've done. This is a picture of us when we hosted Jocelyn Benson in Portage, and I had to include it because I love it. And it was a really good day. It was a really good opportunity, which I spoke about last night at the township board meeting. I am going to go ahead and just read this portion out loud. So last year and this year has been a transitional period for my office. Over the last 8 years since I was first elected in 2016, we have been moving this office toward a focus of statutory duties as our population increases, along with higher expectations from our population. And it's an overall move in the township toward professionalism and making sure that we have the right people doing the right jobs and the right tasks are in the right places, which has been difficult. And it's really a reflection of over the years. There was probably an appropriate frugal mindset here that did not end up resulting in an expansion of staff really at the rate that our population did. And so we had, especially in the clerk's office, tasks that the previous clerk, who had been here for 20 years, had taken on as they came up, and those things included payroll, HR, benefits coordination. Eventually it was social media and even website administration, coordination for the newsletter, right? The clerk was the public relations person, and it was at a time when elections did not have the same challenges that they do now. And I know for a fact that part of the decision of the previous clerk to retire and move on was because she identified what was coming down. And you know, that happened to a lot of clerks in 2016 especially. It happened again in 2020. And as evidenced by, we had 4 townships in this county that did not have clerks running. That's happening again in 2024. Because the demands that have been placed on clerks across the state are so high, smaller townships have not budgeted in a way that would allow those smaller township clerks to work full-time, and it does not afford them the staff to do the things that are required, specifically for elections, let alone the other things that our office has to accomplish. I touch on some of that here, but I go through our experience in this township. So this process was expedited in 2018 with the passage of no reason absentee voting. At that time, I think it was Proposal 3 of 2018. No reason absentee voting. Before, you had to have a reason to vote, and our absentee list was small. The second that passed, where people could get absentee ballots for no reason, our absentee voter list doubled, and then it tripled very quickly within just a year or two. That also resulted in same-day voter registration, which is a completely different situation. You used to have to be registered to vote 30 days before an election to be eligible. Now, if you're not registered to vote where you live, you can register to vote on election day. And that is the service that we gladly provide, but it does increase the work in my office, particularly on election day, but also leading up to. Then we had the global pandemic, and that gave us pause in many of our everyday tasks, and then we could focus on increased absentee requests. But as lengthy as the pandemic seemed at the time, we quickly realized the temporary nature of our situation. Training and retaining high-functioning staff in the clerk's office became more important than ever before. Proposal 2 was passed in 2022, and much of 2023 was spent preparing for the changes to be implemented at the end of 2023 and beyond. At that time, we were preparing at the same time that the legislature was enacting legislation to support Prop 2. And so that alone made that a difficult task, let alone the additional work, and much of that revolved around early voting. It was a critical time for many clerks in the state as we navigated increasing responsibility without increasing resources. But we were able to add full-time staff member to focus on elections, that is Carrie, and records management, bringing the clerk staff count to 3 full-time staff members, that is us 3, and then 1 part-time, and that is Linda at the front, in the front office. She assists with elections when we're in the middle of an election season. Non-statutory duties like payroll and related reporting to the IRS and state of Michigan, some benefit tasks, website administration, and social media management were reassigned from my office to both qualified professionals and more efficient software, increasing our capacity to implement the many changes that have affected elections since 2018. As we have streamlined our work, and streamlining is an important keyword for this entire report, And for the township in general, we've been trying to make things more efficient and streamlined, a little redundant. We have improved internal processes that have resulted in efficiencies for all staff, as well as improved the quality of our work product. I am proud of the growth toward professionalism in township staff, but not as proud as I am of my staff, of course. We are a team, and yeah, I think that that's sort of a theme that you'll see across the state, is that clerks are they're a proud group. Because we do what is the most important thing, which is support democracy, in our opinion. So, we choose this job and we are proud of it. Some additional comments here. I did want the board to be aware or have a reminder that in addition to the statutory duties of clerk, which include elections, some financial management, some smaller tasks like, doing meeting minutes and public noticing, those statutory duties. I do have additional tasks within the township, and I sit on various boards and committees throughout the region, and this is a list of them. But I will not go through that right now. So going on to our favorite, accounts payable, this is Melissa's focus, as I mentioned at the beginning. I just wanted to do a snapshot here so that you guys can see this is how our township spends money, and that largest orange portion of the circle, that is the general fund expenditure. Those other three that represent roughly half of our expenditures, that is a combination of sewer, water, police, and fire. The rest of them are comprised of roads, DDA, parks, streetlights, soda, and building, in that order of amount of expenditures. So here are the numbers. Our office processed over $7 million in payments, over $7.5 million in payments last year. That was 2,728 invoices, resulting in 1,524 payments. Those payments are comprised of checks, EFT, and ACH. And as this board might remember, we amended our purchasing policy last year. Checks used to be the primary form of payment. Our primary form of payment now is electronic, including the ACH and EFTs. So this is just an update. In 2023, we processed over $700,000 in ACH transactions alone, and $73,000 in EFT transfers. And I give you those numbers because they represent a lot of work put in by Melissa, where we retroactively went back and started signing vendors up to be able to participate in that. So we had to gather we had to contact them, gather their financial information, do some trial runs, fail a couple times, and then we made it. So we didn't actually fail, but it was a tough go there for a short period of time. So again, we established more detailed vendor setup procedures. We amended the purchasing policy, like I said, retroactively enrolling vendors. That is ongoing. We'll keep doing that as long as we are running payables. And then we trained new and current staff to best utilize the purchase order program, understand the purchasing policy and general payables procedures. I'm the one who does that for new staff, and then recurring training for current staff. Let's move on to cemeteries, everybody's favorite topic. This is the weirdest part of our job. Cemeteries is the weirdest part of our job. And when you think you cannot be surprised, don't say that out loud, because you will get a call the next day and say, that was not on my bingo card this year. It gets real weird out there. And here are just some numbers. Burials, we had 35 burials, and that cost about $68,000. That was not our cost, but that was how much it cost. So people pay us for the burial cost, and we pay our contractor, who is Rob Stafford from Stafford Excavating. He has been our excavator for, I think it's got to be at least 15 plus years. And then his father actually was before that. And it's not as though we're just comfortable and we like him. We have bid out, and we have attempted to find out if we were getting a good deal with Rob, and every time it has been proven we in fact are. Plus, he has the knowledge of our cemeteries, which I never knew was going to be important, and it has proven to be very important. it is not uncommon to go out there and suddenly see a headstone that was not there before. Or, I'm not even gonna go into those details.
Did they have to move any?
We almost did.
When they did the roundabout on Parkview?
No, well, okay, so
There
that's
were
an
some
interesting
folks
situation.
in the right of way, I thought.
The folks in the right of, no, no one had to be moved and no graves were disturbed. Let me
Okay.
be very clear about that. There is a portion of our Genesee Prairie Cemetery that has a number of unmarked pioneer graves. We discovered that when we employed a gentleman to come up from Ohio and complete ground penetrating radar in all 3 of our cemeteries.
I'm sure they were marked with something. It's just decomposed and part of the earth now.
Well, and that was an interesting process too, because it's not as if, this was a time before vaults and caskets, in the way that we know them now. And so everything has, everything was basically, it was like the first green cemeteries, really.
Yeah.
And you can identify where those bodies were buried by, I don't wanna give too many details because I don't wanna be wrong, but it has to do with how compact the soil is and how it shows up on the radar. And so we do have maps of where those people are buried if anyone ever wants to see those. And they are in a lot of places that we did not expect.
It's, once you see it, it's weird driving by.
It is. And actually, the Green Cemetery, the West Oshtemo Cemetery houses our only green cemetery. And we actually overlaid the Green Cemetery on top of the pioneer burials, but we mapped so that we are not burying people on top of older burials, right? Just honestly, out of respect. It was an interesting process, and when we found out this was happening, I did contact Western in their anthropology department and let them know that it was happening and said, if anybody's interested and sort of taking a look at this further, and I was given an absolute no. If you find an old burial site, you are not supposed to dig it up. There are too many risks with exposing people to old illnesses, and so that process was interesting too. Again, never knew I was gonna learn that in my life. So lot sales and foundations, we sold 43 lots in 2023 and we had 32 foundation orders. So it is our policy that if you choose to have a headstone, we do have to put in the foundation for you. And so Rob Stafford also does that for us. They place that order, we put in the foundation, and then the headstone can be placed on top of that. As far as maintenance goes, this has been a matter of contention. I actually think there's a text on my phone right now from a resident who has a complaint about the cemetery. I did not look at it before this meeting though, because I wanted to come in here fresh-faced. But
Mission
maintenance.
accomplished.
Maintenance of the cemeteries, we spent in 2023 alone $24,000 in removing trees, old bushes and shrubs, cleaning it up, the lawn care, mowing, and military flags. Sometimes we hear that we don't invest enough, but I will tell you that $24,000 was the most we had ever spent in the cemetery, at least in the last 20 years from the records I can find. And the year before that, we spent another $20,000 in tree removal. So we continue to do that work. This year, we're taking the money that we allocated, the additional $20,000, and we've spent some of it on tree trimming, but we're also using it for trying to revitalize the grass in some areas. We've got probably some driveway repairs that have to be done, but so that is ongoing. And
Fencing.
some people leave the cemetery and say, this was a really nice cemetery, and some people do not agree with that. And to that, I say, everyone has an opinion. But I know that our maintenance department and this board has committed the dollars and work toward improving it. And so I don't feel as though we are short changing anyone.
What's also interesting is that when we put out the RFP to request for companies being willing to come in and mow, we got one response. Like, it's
We'll try it again next year.
Try it again next year, but it's not a popular, it must have to do with how.
It's the headstones.
Yeah, have to. Have to be mowed.
So, we could have a cemetery, well, we couldn't now, it's not like we can go back and change it, but, Mount Everest, people refer to that sometimes as a nice-looking cemetery, and it's because they only allow flush markers where they can get in their lawnmowers and go zoom, 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 and be done, and it looks really nice and well-maintained, and that doesn't work when you have a lot of headstones out there in the way. And then also, we have some folks who have put up things in addition to their headstone, which we are trying to figure out how to bring back under our management. Sometimes people forget that all they've purchased are burial rights. They have not purchased a piece of property where they can do anything they want with it. But when you try to correct some of that, what ends up happening in like Comstock is that you have a news article that really inflames people about it, because you start removing people's possessions, their memories, they feel a certain way about it, and it feels very unfair. And that's sometimes difficult to navigate, but we do our best. All right. For the cemeteries, we're going to continue improving our green burial process. We worked with GIS specialist Scott Fitzgerald to create and implement the cemetery viewer online reservation form, which was given during a presentation to the board a while back. Large-scale tree and shrub removal from all 3 cemeteries. A goal for next year, though, it was a goal for this year, but we really haven't been able to figure out how to navigate it, is to repeal our 2018 cemetery master plan that had some really good ideas about really cool things that you can put in cemeteries, like committal shelters and cremains gardens and columbariums, all things that are very expensive, in the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was a really good idea, and I think that our landscape architects got away from themselves and their good ideas. What we have found is that, as it is right now, still the most popular form of burial is a traditional lawn burial. That is what folks want. That's what our residents want. And so we were supposed to have expanded our cemetery this year, but we really can't do that without going back and repealing that master plan, because we would be working against it, and we really don't want to do that. So, more to come on that. Records management. This is Carrie's wheelhouse. So, just say no to paper unless the law tells us otherwise. So, she was able last year to complete digitization of the historic legal files. That was a project that started just before COVID, and we had some staffing changes, and when it comes right down to it, boxes of files are not a priority, especially if you're short-staffed. When you can put those boxes somewhere and just store them long-term, that's an easy solution. Well, we didn't have to do that anymore. She got through all the rest of the boxes, and all of those are safely on our very full servers. Continuous work includes working with planning and public works, those two together, because they do development plans together, and that's what we're really trying to get a hold of. Jody sort of alluded to some of this last night, because we not only need to work on streamlining their working records organization, the things that they're doing now, but we also need to work with the future retention of historic records and just make it better so that it's more easily searchable, which benefits not us, but also the FOIA process, and also, if we are so unlucky, the subpoena process. In addition to that, working with Public Works, specifically Scott Fitzgerald, our GIS specialist, and IT to integrate GIS into our record retention metadata within our repository, which is Laserfiche. And we can do this where GIS data is connected to records in the metadata, which opens up a whole world of information that you can gather at one time. The intention is to make all of that publicly available, as we have made some of our things publicly available, where people can just search records on their own and they don't need to go through the expense and process of going through the FOIA coordinator. They are, as the state of Michigan describes records, public records, They do not belong to us. They do not belong to the township. We can generate as many as we want. They're not ours. The records belong to the public, but we are the stewards of those records. And record keeping is hard. It is, especially when you have changes in technology. So, you know, you had paper records. If you guys ever want to learn about whatever happened to the manifests from the immigrant ships that came over to America, there were thousands and thousands of manifest books from those ships. And there was a large debate on what to do with those records when there became just too many to store. It became too expensive to store. And eventually those records weren't even, you couldn't search through them. They're in large books. And the paper degraded, and it was like, we need this information, because eventually immigration services started using that information in the work that they do. And there was a debate on what do we do, because microfilm was invented in the early 1940s, or right about 1940, and everyone said we need to transfer those to microfilm. And it was, no, we need to keep the paper. And I said, well, here we are in 2024, and that same debate is here. We've had to have a lot of cultural shift from some staff here where I say it's okay to get rid of the paper. There is no legal requirement to keep it. In most circumstances, I mean, there are very few that we've found where you would need an actual paper record. But it's hard because people say, but what happens if that file gets corrupted, or what if there's a cyber attack? Well, what happens if there's a fire? Because we have had entire townships and other municipalities lose all of their records because of natural disasters or man-made disasters. Actually, we had a staff member here who does not have a birth certificate because the county building where his birth certificate was stored burned down, and the response at that time, about 70 years ago, was, good luck, you don't have a birth certificate. And that was really difficult for him to navigate, but those challenges, I guess my point is that those challenges are going to be there regardless of the format of the record, and keeping them in dusty boxes that you cannot search down in the basement, in my opinion, as the person who's in charge of records in this township by statute, is not the best way to maintain records. So we are moving forward with that. We're also working with the building department to digitize outstanding records. Carrie was able to complete the assessing digital project, and if you ever worked with someone before who I think at one point said you could take the paper out of her cold dead hand, we talked her into it, and I don't know if she's happy about it, but she let us do it anyway.
You got through all of assessing?
Well, not those property records. We're talking about all of
Okay.
those historic records.
Because
that were
I'm
in the
like,
office.
that's interesting, I'm like,
No, not the property records. That Yale is still working on those property records, so we have not intervened in any way on those yet. Instead, we're coming on the back end, and we are doing the building records that were often tied to those property records. So overall, the work is getting done.
the number of empty boxes alone in the last year is amazing.
And I will tell you, there are a handful of people that don't even want us to get rid of the empty boxes, so. Shout out to Linda, so.
Well, don't get rid of all of them, because I gotta move.
There we have it, case in point. And then, actually, I put a green check there, that should have been an orange check. Clean out the basement files through digitization and record purging. Or as we like to call it, record obliteration. We have some records down in the basement that really I haven't paid attention to in years that can, one, be destroyed at this point. But then it was like, let's stop moving things around. Let's deal with what we have in the office. Let's not put any more records down there, Jim, in case he ever sees this. But Carrie identified that as one of her goals for next year, is that she wants to get that basement cleaned out so that there is nothing down there that doesn't need to be. And that is important because the state of Michigan will tell you that they have a records retention schedule that we have to follow. And that means that when it's time to destroy a record, you need to destroy that record. It's not just for our own well-being, which it is, because if you have a record, then you will be expected to produce that record at some point. which can be a sort of a hairy situation, especially when you have different versions of things, or if it's a subpoena situation. The state of Michigan says anyhow, if you want to keep a record longer than we tell you you can, then you need to ask for permission, and I can assure you this township's never done that. And I don't intend to make that our practice unless we do come across something where we say, we really need to keep this. But the state has identified some items in the records retention guide of records that when it is time for you to get rid of it, it could be appropriate for you to offer that to an archival project at a local college or even back to the state. So there are few instances, I mean, I know, well, not meeting minutes, because some records you do keep forever, like meeting minutes. Can you think of anything off the top of your head? I don't even know why I just did this to you. I wish I hadn't, I'm sorry. There are some that have these little asterisks next to them that say, you know, find somebody if you can't keep them. Yeah, there's not much. And equipment and software, we did purchase a new high-speed desktop scanner. So most of our staff have their own desktop scanners, and those were good. That was an investment that John and I made back in like 2017, where I was like, we didn't have any digital scanners here other than our plotter scanner and like our regular copy machine. And so we started that process, and that was a huge change to our budget because those were $800 to $1,000 a piece. And we had never this township had not made an investment like that in that type of equipment before. And so that has proliferated throughout the office, and most people who need them have those over the last 8 years. But what we invested in specifically for the new records clerk was a high-speed desktop scanner, so it's a larger one than what each person has, and that actually assisted in accomplishing these goals that we already talked about. We also purchased a new large-scale plotter scanner, so that has been a troubled history. We had one and we replaced it just before COVID. And what ended up happening was that plotter scanner sat back there and wasn't used. It went through its warranty period, and when we came back in and started using it again, the motherboard had fried. And that was a loss of about a 10 to 13, somewhere around there, $1,000 investment, where we had to immediately replace it because we do have to have that equipment. We replaced it, and that just wasn't really a good piece of equipment either. So now we've replaced it for a third time, and this time, high hopes. Now, it's actually a really good piece of equipment, and Carrie was able to very easily train on it, and she uses it very frequently, as well as the rest of the staff, because we need that for some of these large plans that you guys see sometimes. So moving forward, we want to continue to ensure staff has the proper resources in both equipment and software. We already have some recommendations regarding the current repository Laserfiche that we have, maybe a possible change. We don't know, that has to be talked through, but we want to be able to use that along with the GIS component. So we will just work through that project and bring a recommendation to the board. We also want to utilize Laserfiche or whichever software we have to full capacity. Don't get me wrong, I'm saying these things as if we're going to just switch softwares. I don't want to do that. It sounds like a terrible project, but I also want to do what's best for the records program. So I'm trying to be flexible. And then we will continue to identify additional needs for equipment or software. And then we will move on to the favorite topic of elections. And some of these numbers I thought were really interesting. So we're talking specifically 2023 now. We had over 18,000 registered voters. We had 3 elections in 2023, and I want to remind this board that that was a non-election year. So we had 3 elections in a non-election year. And unless there is some legislation that changes that, I don't see that will be any different moving forward. It used to be elections every 2 years, and now it's all elections all the time. Total number of voters in 2023, 13,215, and that generated the need to send out over 6,800 absentee ballots. And on the other side, you'll see we only had 5,595 returned, but it doesn't matter because that's our job. We still have to send those ballots out when requested. We have to go through that process. It costs money for the envelopes, for the postage, the ballots themselves, staff time. We don't always get them all back, but that is the service we provide to voters. We also had 6,379 in-person voters, and I thought that was interesting when I compared those numbers together. I thought that the difference between absentee and in-person would have been much greater, and it just wasn't last year, and so that was interesting. I think we'll really see a switch to the numbers as early voting is fully implemented and realized by voters. We've implemented the permanent ballot list, which is a huge change from just regular absentee voter list. Permanent ballot, we send you a ballot automatically. That alone is going to increase voter participation.
What do you consider an absentee ballot here? Does voting early?
No,
That's in person.
early voting, that 9 days of early voting that occurs at those 4 locations that our township is in agreement with the county, that is its own separate. Those would be in-person voters.
They would be classified
Yes.
as in-person voters, okay. So
I'm
only
pointing
folks
this way
that are-
because that's where the expo center was, which was where I was the site coordinator.
So only if I receive my ballot in the mail, basically, would it be considered an absentee?
Or pick it up at the counter, or anytime
Okay,
that a
picking it up at the
ballot is
counter.
gonna go through our absentee counting board, then
Got
it's
it.
considered an absentee
That makes
ballot.
sense, okay.
Overall, we have just the number of election workers that we have to accomplish these goals has really increased. Some of it has shifted from in precinct on election day to the absentee counting board, but last year we had 98 election workers, which all have to be managed for pay, they have to be managed for training, they have to be managed for scheduling. It is a big task that might not happen all year, but when you have 3 elections, when you didn't expect it, that's just, it's additional work where you have to reprioritize. We paid out over $28,000 in election pay last year in a non-election year. Some other interesting numbers. So in addition to our work for elections, we still process voter registrations, which means that we have to generate MasterCards. That means that we have to generate voter ID cards. Those all come with a cost. None of those costs are reimbursable to this township. Those are all our all of our statutory duties. So we processed 1,884 voter registrations last year. That was both at the Secretary of State, where we still have the work to do afterwards, and voter registrations that came across our desk either through the mail or across the counter. We spent over $27,000 in postage last year. But of the $114,697 that we spent on election-related work, excluding staff salaries, we did get almost $45,000 in reimbursements. So, well worth it, job well done. This really does take our focus away from anything else that we're doing. Right now, Carrie has been doing only election work. She's not doing records management right now, right? And the staff knows that. So we work with staff, we have meetings with staff, we formulate plans about their records. During the time when Carrie's not working on elections, and then they know, for the next 4 months, it is elections only. And so we work within that so that we can accomplish both sides of those goals. Accomplishments, goals, and visions for elections. So we did enter into agreement with the county in 18 jurisdictions to provide early voting. We implemented that we have our own site supervisor duty that is a part of that agreement, which includes site setup prior to the election and providing specifically, I think it probably has to do with my role as president of the local clerks association, but I work with the city of Kalamazoo, as I mentioned last night, Deputy Clerk Shelby Moss, who is an Oshtemo resident but works for the city, and County Clerk Meredith Place, and we provided training to early election workers. We split that up so it wasn't all just on one person. And this year we provided the training to clerks for site supervision because we're trying to tighten up the process for early voting. We purchased, trained, and implemented use of the high-speed tabulator for the absentee counting board. That was quite a process, but we love it. The absentee counting board loves the high-speed tabulator. We love the high-speed tabulator. We also overhauled, as part of our streamlining and getting rid of some of those other tasks, we were able to focus on elections, and we overhauled our election checklists at the end of last year, and we're implementing those this year and our procedures internally. We purchased new laptops for electronic poll books. That was important. The laptops that we had, do you know how old those were? The ones that we had, I think we'd had since 2015 or 16, somewhere around there.
Seems like they wouldn't update or something.
That was when we replaced them then. Right now, we're still working in this Windows 10, Windows 11, will they, won't they situation. We took some additional dollars that we had in our capital budget last year and purchased those laptops, budgeted more this year, purchased the rest. And we only need 10, bare minimum 10 laptops for each precinct on election day for a poll book. We will probably get to a point where we will need dual poll books in the precinct. And then also, it's important to have additional laptops for training. It's really difficult to train 98 election workers to use, actually probably closer to 60 election workers to use an electronic poll book if you only have 10 laptops. And part of our overhaul of our process, you can see here, was that we will be implementing this year in our July training, we will be implementing electronic poll book training for all election inspectors. We used to leave it up to whoever wanted to, but then you get into this position where you only have one or two people who know how to do the how to do the computer on election day, and it's just not efficient. And when we were talking with the city of Kalamazoo, they had implemented this and we thought that was a good idea, so we're gonna do it too and see how it works out. Because I think there continues to be some folks who are not comfortable with technology, but that is changing as time goes on. We also are implementing specialized training for each election position, and so we have our absentee counting board, we have our chairs, we have our receiving board, we have our election inspectors, and then we also have we have two different types of chairs. We have in precinct chairs, and then we have our absentee counting board chairs. We continue, this is actually ongoing, but we did all receive our accreditation from the state of Michigan through the Bureau of Elections. We are also all accredited to train election workers. These are good things. Most of the time, smaller townships, now we are the largest township in this county, but the challenge that some of our smaller townships have, especially in South County, is that it's just the clerk. And so they get trained, but actually you can't even provide training to your election workers if it's under 10,000 for that very reason. If you have under 10,000 voters, by law, you can't provide that training. And it's because there's a recognition there of just resources and ability. We have 3 people who can provide training now, and so that's really good. And we will continue.
Can we sell that service out to smaller townships that don't have their own?
I don't sell it, but I do have other townships. So in July, we have 7 days of training. Is that right? 7, I think, which is the most training we have ever offered. And we do have some other townships who will be sending it's stragglers, because the county is also required by law to provide training specifically for smaller townships. And if their election workers aren't able to make it to those trainings, you have to be certified to work an election at least every 2 years. And so we do help one another out in that, and so they'll send some folks to us, and I've sent some of my election workers to other municipalities if they weren't able to make the dates I offered. And that is a good agreement, and I hope that continues. And with that, unless my staff has anything they'd like to add, that is all of it for now. Are there any questions?
No, I have a comment though.
Please.
Madam Record Keeper, now I know why we have a PowerPoint electronically. You didn't want to print the paper.
That was exactly it. So actually, at one of our first, at our first AGV meeting, Michael Chapman said, "Ugh, paper. I can't believe they did this." And I was so pleased. Nobody asked me about it until the end of the day. Anne contacted me, and I saw your email too, but Anne had contacted me, and she's like, I'd love to print off your AGVs. And I said, I have nothing to print. And she said, okay. Are you sure? No.
So if you would be, I mean, I assume we can send this to Anne and she can send it out to the board.
I'm gonna put this on our website.
Okay.
I'm gonna put this on the clerk's page. This is my first go. It's sort of an annual report. It'll probably look a little more refined and maybe even a little more detailed next year, but I got this idea sort of late after seeing the county clerk's annual report, and I said, why am I not doing that? What a good idea to share. This is how, these are some of the ways in which we spend our time. And so, and it's easy to look up numbers, like how many ballots you sent out, It just seemed like a really good idea, and Kyle actually said that next year he would help us sort of, make it a little bit better and presentable, but I decided I do want to put this on the website, so, on the clerk's page. Any questions or comments after that?
What happens if someone comes in and wants a ballot in a different language?
So, actually, that's interesting because right now there are a couple Senate bills that address that right now, and we have never had that request. But the idea of having that request does cause me a little anxiety, and so there will be some guidance in the form of law about how we would deal with that. And from what I've read so far, I think it depends on the demographics in your township that would require you to be able to provide not just ballots, but also directions. So when that happens, that won't be something that's just on me. So the county clerk, that is one of her roles, is to provide ballots to us by a certain date every year. So any statute that changes with regard to language, she would be required to implement, and so that would be a partnership with her. Or, the person that's in that role, but it's gonna be Meredith, so.
So if someone walked in right now, or on
I would
August,
not have a ballot for
they
them.
would not be able to vote.
No, I don't know that. See, because we also have, we have a number of ways in which people vote. Voting does not have to be a solo venture. So every aspect of elections, it's all public. The only thing that's not public is the way in which someone votes. And the way in which someone votes is very personal, and you kind of have assistance voting. In addition to that, we do have voter assist terminals. We have them, people don't always notice that they're there, but we do have those in every precinct. And those are programmable, why does that sound weird? Programmable.
I mean, it's a word, I don't know how you're gonna finish the sentence and see where we're at.
But we do have to, I do have to finish that sentence. Those have the ability to have ballots read to you, and you can also have different digitized forms of a ballot. So I think that's a tool we could use, but that's not something that we could do right now if someone came in with a request. So that is a challenge I look forward to solving without being in the situation. I would have to work closely with the Bureau of Elections and determine how to help facilitate voting for that voter. My answer wouldn't be no, go somewhere else, right? I'm not going to turn away a voter. I'm going to exhaust every avenue we have to help them vote. So it would start with a call to our county clerk and to the Bureau of Elections, and we would work through that issue together.
Do you see any changes in the number of precincts?
Yeah, so with the change with Prop 2, the requirements for the number of voters for each precinct has changed. So right now, or it was 2,999 voters, registered voters. After that, you had to split a precinct. And we were getting to the point where I have two precincts that I was thinking of splitting, Precinct 2 and Precinct 9. And it was really challenging because it's difficult to find a facility to run an election in. We choose not to in this township. We choose not to use schools because that was a situation that became really controversial. You're talking about opening up, schools are locked down for the most part, well, except for election day, when the general public can just walk in. And as someone who worked in schools, I knew what a challenge that was. Because you end up having to sort of corral the students in different parts of the building so that they are not, exposed to the general public during the school day. And so we never went through that request to, through KPS to have a precinct there. The only other places you can have them are public places and churches. That really limits your ability to find a place. And we went through that. I received at least 3 denials from churches when I was trying to find a new precinct. Because at that point, the churches give up their own ability to.
Preach, baby.
Well, they give up their ability to, they're no longer a private church. Once you agree to become a precinct, you, on that day, you are a public location, which means all the public laws apply. And one of the biggest challenges it was gun laws. That's quite frankly what it was. The churches had policies where you couldn't bring guns into the church, but on election day, you can't, that's not a policy you can enforce. So, with that, it's changed to, I think, 5,999, and so actually, we have the ability now, we might consolidate some precincts.
Are you looking to do that in 2024? Is that going to be part of your plan for 2024?
Not this year, no, we're not changing it. If we had done it this year, we would have had to have done it before January. So there are a lot of timelines and that you have to follow. We would have to work with the county clerk on that and make sure that we are identifying boundaries that are legal. And it would be nice to sort of streamline some of that, because when you look at our election map, you see we've got the precinct here, but the polling location's over here in this precinct, and this one's over here, and our elections corner down on the corner of Stadium and 9th Street, where we have elections at 2 precincts at Voyage Church, 1 at the community center, and we've got 1 there at the Oshtemo Methodist Church. We could consolidate some of that,
It seems like with more people using the absentee ballot and now with the early voting, it hopefully won't even be an issue.
Yeah, it's interesting because, it's hard for us to look at numbers and sort of see any trends because the ways in which people vote
Yeah,
have
it's
changed
changing so
almost every
much.
year. And so
And
we're,
eventually, we're not even going to be coming to a physical place.
well, right now, we are the only state in the country, and I think this is still true, that provides 9 days of early voting, no reason absentee, and same day in-person voting. And it begs the question, do you have to have all 3 to facilitate voting and allow people to exercise their right to vote? Probably not. Probably not. And there are probably ways to save money in that. I am cautious about these election changes. With early voting, this is the first time that county clerks in the state of Michigan have gotten involved in actual election administration. And I am very weary of that shift from elections from local townships to the county. Other states do it that way. They run elections at the county level. I'm not a fan. I think that presents its own set of challenges and problems. And the best way to make sure that elections are fair and not corrupted, that they are really doing what they're supposed to do to facilitate voting, is to keep them decentralized and at a local election. And I will say that till that ability is ripped out of my hand. So, but we are aware of that. We appreciate our partnership with the county, but we do not want the county to take over elections for us. Plus, what would we do with all of our spare time?
Build housing.
Maybe. All the money we're saving in elections, we could put in
Mow
the,
the lawns at the cemetery.
we could mow,
Cementing around
we
the
could mow them even more,
headstones.
yeah. So, any other questions?
So did you have any vision towards the parts that weren't related to elections, cemeteries, or records retention? I mean, you also do budgeting work, or I didn't,
I had sort of, I had really kind
it's
of.
not a big part of it anymore, I don't know.
Well, the budgeting work I see as my board role. I mean, and I see the board clerk role and then the actual full-time sort of staff clerk role. They're not always the same. I mean, they obviously overlap, but I think that budgeting goals that we have, I think we would probably build as a board. I would certainly present an idea if I have it. I think that before the budget is finalized, I will have quite a few recommendations in various ways about how we could spend our money that would affect my office. Remember when I said it was gonna be a 10-minute presentation?
Told me it was gonna be an hour.
No, I said the whole meeting was gonna be an hour.
So wait, is this meeting gonna be over 5 minutes, or what?
No.
So you've literally left me 4 minutes?
I'm just gonna say who's going next.
I missed
Thank
the
you, that was
10
nice.
minutes part. I didn't hear that part.
I didn't hear that part. Thanks,
No, I think I told that to Sherry earlier
So I
today.
can't remember anybody saying that. Would have set a time though.
You wanna just
I
stay
knew
there?
you were, I knew you were being really optimistic when you said
always
that.
I always am.
Right. On to our treasurer.
Thank you, guys.
We are back to paper.
Good old fashioned way, right, Claire?
I just followed suit with everybody else and it didn't
Oh,
occur
you're
to me
printing in
today.
color too, I see.
You know what, I hit the printer in the main area and that's what I got. They've all been in color.
They're gonna make me ask for a paper copy of these AGVs right now, and I don't know what to do. Am I stubborn and I just sit here and act like I'm looking at them?
Who's asking you that?
I have an extra one.
No, I figured, I don't know.
It's actually down there. It was down there.
Michael, say it.
Especially paper in a day like this, it feels it's all human.
What am I gonna blow my nose with this? This is so weird.
For those of you.
Paper, not the AGVs. Sorry, Claire.
No, you're fine. For those that were here for the last AVGs, you'll find that mine are very similar to the year before because what I do is very repetitive. But we'll go over these anyway and see if there's any questions when we're done. So 2023 accomplishments, we did the balancing and settlement with the county and all other taxing jurisdictions, so schools, libraries, brownfields, and others. We worked with the accountants to maintain the monthly reconciliation in a timely manner, identified personal property, sent bills and collected the payments. We are seeing an uptick in the collection amounts year over year. I'm not sure of the facts on this, but prior to me getting elected in 2020, it wasn't something that was pushed too hard. And so we've made an effort to work on that, and we're seeing those delinquent amounts go down. In 2023, I did assessed all of our tax bills to make sure that the lights at the time, which we don't have anymore, fire, police, and et cetera, were correct on an individual property basis. That took me about a month, but they were completely up to date at that time. For the first year ever, provided the tax revenue information for the 2024 budget. We issue dog licenses to residents, that we still do that now. It is at no cost, or we don't get paid to do that. It's something that we offer as a service to our residents, rather than electing to, as a board, not provide those. We did used to get paid for them at some point, but we don't anymore. We just continue to do that as a service. In 2023, the incoming funds were just over 58.5 million. I do want to point out that obviously that is not all township revenue. A very small fraction of that is township, and that the rest of it would be for taxes to other entities. Just over 4 million of that was from Invoice Cloud, which was our online payment portal. So that's about 7% of the annual revenue came through online payments.
Are all of the fees associated with online payments passed on to the consumer?
They are.
Okay, thank you.
By statute. You
Good.
can't pay it.
I did have the Certified Funds Investment Management certificate, and I went in and did additional training, and now I have the advanced certification for funds investment management. We effectively processed all rental facility applications, which includes the payments insurance documents, and issuing the refunds after the rental is complete. Collected 97.99% of all property tax bills for the 2022 tax year. I'm an active member of the HR committee with Public Media Network, as well as being on the Public Media Network board. And we worked with Public Works and Legal to generate sewer and water payment agreements. We then have them signed, and we follow up with the county registrar for their recordings. In 2022, again, we processed those delinquent tax bill, 2024. Again, we sent out those delinquent personal property tax bills and have began collecting those funds. We go 5 years back with those because that's all we're legally allowed to collect. So we're collecting 19 through 23 at the moment. We completed the balancing and settlement with the county and all other taxing jurisdictions. We collected 98.3% of the property taxes for 2023. Our goal set the year prior was 98.25, so we beat that, not by much, but we did. The database for 2024 tax year is already set up. Summer bills are in the mail, but we've also set up the winter tax year so that I can provide budget revenue information for the 2025 budget revenues. I'm still an active member at the Human Resources Committee with Public Media Networks and under board. We're continuing the responsibility of the parks rentals and everything that's associated with that beyond the checkouts and check-ins and maintenance and cleanup and stuff like that. Incoming funds for year-to-date is actually, I was just mentioning it earlier, quite high. Considering we're only 6 months into the year, we're already at 47, just under 47.5 million. That will include taxes from January and February from the 23 taxes. So they are in that year. And so far, we have a little bit of an uptick in the 7.7% collected through online payments with Invoice Cloud. We have started striking the 2029 delinquent personal property bills. Again, it's not a bill that we can collect, and so we're at the phase right now where we've notified all of the entities that that affects, and then we'll be having a court date set up here shortly in the beginning of July. Going to continue training the assistant treasurer, deputy treasurer. I'm currently at the process of, if something were to happen, she could make sure that everybody is fully paid, implement the benefits with MERS, Greenleaf, and things like that. And we're going to be working on, for the remainder of the year, how she would break down tax reports, send out tax checks to other entities, like I would do every 2 weeks on a bi-weekly basis, and get her up to date on all of that. We continue with the sewer agreement processes. There has been an uptick due to legal and public works work with the 300 residents with the mandatory connections. So those are coming through pretty rapidly and working out very well. We were working, and this is a complete thing, we were working with the building department to set up an online payment option for their services. The township does have a policy that we will not take credit cards over the phone. With Invoice Cloud, if we take something over the phone without verifying their identity, it's not a covered purchase. And so then we're open to fraud and things like that. So that is all set up, building department, and they've been booming in, but they're now able to take payments through Invoice Cloud as well with banking information or credit or debit cards. We will work again with the Brownfield Authority to collect the correct amounts. We've had a little bit of an issue in the past year with decimal points and things like that, which really strew what we're supposed to collect versus what we are collecting. So I work with them every year prior to the taxes to kind of straighten all that out, so we're both on the same page when we actually.
Pesky decimal points.
Yeah, so decimal point.
Mundane detail.
So it's very small things that they're really easy to miss, like if somebody changed a millage rate, even if it's like a .002, their Brownfield spreadsheets kind of only use 2 decimal points, but it could, millage rates usually go 4 beyond the decimal, and so that throws off the amount. Well, when you're talking, multi-million-dollar facilities, that's thousands of dollars, and if we don't match, then we don't match. So I make sure all of that matches before we actually get into a tax season. Just easier that way. So I'll continue to work with them to get that done. Either myself with the state reports or our accountant, there are reports due to the state every year, and either I will do those or I will double check with our accountant to make sure that he has those done, so we don't miss anything. Last winter tax season and this upcoming winter season, I'll continue to work with the city of Kalamazoo. We collect for them at their request the delinquent water and sewer bills that they haven't been able to collect through the year. And so they get put on the tax bills, collected, and then sent to the city to balance out. I've already mentioned the revenue projections for the budgeting. I will be attending the APT conference again this year like I did last. APT, I spelled it out on the next page.
Association of Professional Treasurers.
Association of Public Treasurers of the
Public.
US and Canada. And so I make sure to go to that every year because it is specific to treasurers. Some new ideas, some new processes that they throw out there, and it's very, very helpful. So I do go to that every year and I will continue to do that. One thing I wanted to add that's not on here, there's so much goes into what you actually do that when you sit down and think about it, you miss so much because it becomes so second nature that you just do it. But we have been helping the Parks Department work on a rental facility policy. The staff or the deputy treasurer is very much into how can I show somebody that they violated a policy or a procedure if we don't have a policy. So we've kind of sat down and started working on those. They're almost done. But when they are done, we'll be presenting those to the supervisor, who will then present them to Parks, who will then present them to the board. So it's a process, but we're this close.
Okay, sure you don't want another committee involved in that?
No.
I heard Neil's got a lot of.
You get to name the new committee.
My visions for 2025, the first vision I can see is signing the sewer bond agreement, which will then generate the sewer agreements for the residents. That will take a lot of organization with the number that we have. I believe there's 890 homes that will be scheduled to hook up if that bond or when that bond goes through. So we need to make sure that we're on point with organization and streamlining and whatnot to keep up with that. Again, I'll work with the Brownfield Authority, ensure that state reports are complete, work with the county for the settlement as normal. Additional training that would help me in areas that would better assist the township. I do want to point out, it will be enacted in 2025, but we transitioned our savings and checking accounts with First National for the first year at the end of 2023 into an ICS account. So everything's kind of pushed out everywhere, so there's no risk for any dollars that we have. I've also done that recently with Huntington Bank. And so we are now completely risk-free as far as the 250,000 FDIC. There's nothing over there led. We are also implementing in the next month or so positive pay. The fee for that is very minimal. I believe it's $25 a month for the general fund, but we have had small amounts that have generated police reports of fraud that normally wouldn't trigger, what was that, like $100 here, $50 there, $300. And so we're doing the positive pay implementation starting next month so that none of that can get through without any flags. As always, I will be available for residents and businesses that have tax questions, continue to work with the city for the collecting their delinquent water and sewer bills. My goal for 2024 collection, I'm raising to 98.35, and I will continue raising until I don't meet it.
You can't force people to, you're gonna go knock on doors.
I don't know.
1/4%.
It's a little bit, but every time.
Pretty well enough, but I think it's pretty low.
So the County Treasurers Association has a little,
You're competing.
I want to say plastic trophy that it really doesn't, it's nothing fancy. It's the recognition of getting in the top 3 from the townships and the villages and the county, and so that's my goal.
Go get your
What I would
pasta,
like
Claire.
to do, that I would request at some point in the budget for your review, is to obtain a safe that's adequate to hold 2 cash drawers, petty cash, change bag, stuff like that. Currently, well, I'm not gonna say where they are. Currently, they're not in a safe, and I think that's
How
not,
much cash
I
are
feel like you did say where they were.
well, I didn't say where they were.
how much cash are we roughly maintaining on
It
site
depends on the
day-to-day?
day. I
On
don't,
a-
I
on
don't
a-
think you should do that.
Yeah, so the board approved a second cash drawer when we had the building department transition into the township, so now we have 2 registers and cash to fund those
Can
registers.
we do nightly deposits though?
We do.
Somebody's gonna have to tell me, I don't know, you guys don't wanna do it in a public meeting, but I wanna know how much cash are we maintaining?
It depends on which period of the year we're in. During tax season, it can be a significant amount.
Sure, but if you're depositing every night, you should be starting with roughly the same amount every morning, right?
That is correct.
That's the number.
I was gonna say she can speak to
So
that.
you
I
would-
don't know.
That's the number I wanna know.
I'll give you that number with a little bit further explanation without jeopardizing security of.
Yeah, that's fine.
600. The cash drawer start with $600, right? At 300
That's-
each
that's
drawer
the
or whatever.
beginning.
Yeah.
That's the beginning of
Okay.
it.
And
That's
still
what I was
on the
curious about.
record, let's agree that probably should have a safe.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we do have 2 safes.
So currently, I have a small safe that is in my office, we'll leave it at that is about that big on the exterior, but the size of smaller than the screen, so the interior is about that big.
Oh, right, because it's fire
And so I
safe.
can't put really anything but a cash bag in it, and some coins.
That's fine.
So that is my ask, I think it's a lot more secure.
How much are you talking for that?
So it's anywhere
5 days worth of
between
cash.
8 and 1,250.
It's on the paper.
I
Unless
flipped it over. It is.
paper.
It's straight about, sorry, I stopped reading and I was only listening at
And
that point.
so there's a bigger range there with the $450. I did briefly mention it to the supervisor who requested that I get with maintenance to kind of evaluate the companies that they may be coming from and to see if they have any knowledge on floor safes or standing safes more than I do, and I have not got to that yet, so me doing search with like Uline, which is a commercial construction company, that was $800, and then there was a different company that went up to $1,250, so it would be in there. It'd be in between.
I've got a basement, you could turn the whole thing into a safe.
I've been in this basement.
I'll never go in it again, I promise.
Pull up with the drunks.
Not trucks.
Pull up with the dump truck.
It's called Shred It, bro.
Bonfire.
Yes,
That
that was actually a way they used to do that here.
Here, they capture the
Bonfire.
soda.
Yeah, so
Mentally friendly.
with adding
Seems important.
Those PCBs.
something, what did we change? Oh, the fire millage changed, earlier. And so I recapped with legal about 2 months or a month ago, the soda and the DDA TIF capture to make sure that we were capturing it correctly. And we were not, but it was minimal, so we are now, and I wanna continue to,
The TIF captures the SAD?
for the DDA and soda.
It does?
Wait, what was your question?
The TIF captures the SADs?
No.
They're only the general property tax levies, right?
Does the TIF capture the road millage?
No.
Or the police, or the fire?
No.
So, no.
Just general levy from us and then
So,
whatever.
yeah, so general and other entities, and there was a lot of confusion and misinformation from a larger entity that some were included and some were not, and when we actually pulled the agreement, it was not the case, so that has all been corrected.
The larger entity, that's gotta be the county, okay? I
didn't.
Well, that works by you.
I guess the state of Michigan.
Michigan or the
So we have for our money.
We did have some entities incorrect in there, and we're missing another one, so that has all been fixed, and I'm gonna follow up again with that next year, depending on what planning, as she mentioned in her ABG, which wouldn't affect 2025, but maybe 2026, by either, contribution from us more, or having the county, get a new agreement with the county. So I'll check on that again in there. And then I would
But
like.
we're making no sudden moves.
No sudden moves. Well, and I want to point out that if we did open that, that would be so that we could utilize the road millage as well.
I know, but if we
And as a
reopen it, they
tax-
can take their portion.
They can withdraw, but I also want to remind everybody that if we did it for our benefit, we'd be moving money from roads to soda or DDA. So it's still taking it from ourselves, if that makes sense. We can discuss later.
But it would just go in there for specific projects in those outlying districts.
Yeah.
Instead of, in the fund, in the general fund, where it could go, or well, in the road fund where it
It would be
could,
in the road fund, and
but it wouldn't be.
there's a lot of budgeting questions from road and sewer direction that
I know
wouldn't
there's-
warrant taking money from the road
Yeah.
fund.
No, and they're good tools, they're useful, I just, I always worry about, never mind, doesn't matter. It is a philosophical feeling I have with regard to these captures that takes
And-
away from the greater good.
And so the last thing I added on to for myself here when I was thinking about things is I do have an ask from my assistant or my deputy to see if we can make the rental forms fillable online.
Yes.
Actually, you don't even need our permission to do that, just do it.
Well, I would need Kyle's assistance, so
He did my election applications and my,
Well, Dusty turns, I know how she operates, so.
I just say it out loud and Kyle's like, let me do it real quick. And I'm
when we're
like,
ready to make those fillable, and I
Yeah,
would-
get on his list.
Okay, and we want to try to make them all have the same list of rules and
We just can't,
list
we
of
still can't
costs.
accept payments online for that.
okay, so if we fill it out in person and we mail it in and they call to make a payment, no, we can't take a payment over the phone. However, if we can set it up online so that the rental agreement generates an invoice number, then they could go play it online by paying an invoice.
Is the non-taking of payment over the phone, is that like?
let me get Jeff Lansky on the line.
Yeah.
Stop.
I'm telling on you. Jeff Lansky's our insurance guy.
I mean, we used to have at former employers, we had very specific policies in place for taking credit cards over the phone. So, I mean, is it just because we're government, or is it because our insurance agent doesn't think it's a great idea?
A big part of it is the insurance piece.
But but convenience for residents too, right? Like,
Yeah, but if they could pay online the way she's saying, that mitigates the risk, as long as they could put the identification number, that proves they have the card in hand, that would mitigate the risk from us.
But I just read that to people when I make payments over the phone. So what's the difference between,
Well, our insurance company would say that is a terrible way to do that because it comes back to what we would be reimbursed for if there's fraud. And it would be nothing.
And it also has probably a lot to do with their vendor. And so prior to Invoice Cloud, which was enacted pretty much just when I started, a few months before I started in 2020, I think it was Point and Pay, and that vendor does cover over the phone payment. Invoice Cloud does not.
okay,
But why did we switch from Point and Pay? Because I don't remember why now.
Fees. is the
Oh,
only
okay.
thing
what
that I
size
know of.
payments are we taking that would be over the phone with a card like this,
For just parks?
roughly?
It could be up to
General.
$600 or more dollars.
okay, facility
just thinking
rentals,
that's a
I'm on
resolution,
another
whether-
local.
Because you've got security deposits, rental fees.
So the highest rental fee is $250 or $200 or $250, so let's say.
$300 for carriage barn,
Okay, so $300 if you're not a resident. If you choose to have alcohol, there's a $250 deposit, so there's $550 plus a $200 deposit, so we're at $750.
So to reserve a facility.
That could, yeah, real quick.
View facilities.
I mean, I already have to deal with bounce checks after the rental's already, so I don't want to have to deal with fraud either.
So a general rental.
Tell you later.
Do we
I
have any more?
accidentally almost approved 2 purchase orders today, and Sally explained to me why, because you were checking on the check, you know, the actual checks. And I was like, oh no, I
So
hope
if
not.
I have a deposit that was like on the 15th, or check paid on the 15th, and I deposited it on the 16th or the 17th, that hasn't had enough banking days to come back as an NSF, so I won't approve a
Do you have any
refund.
questions?
That makes sense, that's smart.
I'm just trying to catch up.
But why can't we take rental payments over the internet? Over the internet?
I'm
Online, some people call it,
Because there's nothing,
Oh, the internet all done.
on the web.
It's called.
Over the internet.
so as departments have progressed, what used to be that planning could never take a payment online. And so we had to set them up with their own web address, so to speak, that would kind of show in my portal to apply the payments. And they're giving it an invoice number. The only way to set up building was to give, or have it set up so that the building was putting an invoice into,
Sure,
or
okay.
at least an invoice number. So when the contractor or whatever goes to pay online, there's an invoice number box that they can put in. If they don't have that number, it won't allow them to make a
Right,
payment.
it's not gonna pay anything, right.
So I would need a Parks form to generate an invoice number so that they could actually go in and make the payment.
We actually have that ability now, though, with
So we do.
incognito forms.
We do, there's a couple of catches, like we don't want people paying for a rental just because they filled out a form and didn't check the date to make sure it was available.
So I was looking on this
So there's
website
gonna
for
be-
this neighboring or this neighboring community that has a pretty robust parks department. And you can't even move forward in the process until you put the number of people and the date you want. So the first thing it does is check the date and time before you can even get to.
Right, we could integrate that where, they select a date and it only allows them to if it's available.
And so I don't know where to start with that, so then I'm.
His name's Kyle.
That's-
His name's Kyle.
It is a
His name is Kyle. He would- he
2025
could- he
vision,
could
so I
manage this
do
whole
wanna
thing.
work closely with Kyle, I do imagine it's gonna take up some of his time. But in the perfect world, you'll put in your date, how many people, what facility, it'll tell you yes or no, generate an invoice, and then you can go online and make a payment. Done.
Yeah. He's the one who set up the whole building authority
My
for that.
brother's living with me now, so it comes
I'm like, what's she saying? How do you spell color?
out.
Right.
Center Street.
Do you have any other questions for Claire?
I do have one question. At one meeting, we were talking about do some of these like, zones generate the jobs that they promise? And does that make sense?
IFTs.
Thank you, IFT.
Oh, I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I was trying to think
I
of.
promised a job, what?
No, you somehow said that you would
Check
look
this.
and.
You wanted to
check
follow
and
up
follow
and see if
with
the
it.
jobs were actually created, basically.
Oh, that information would come from Southwest Michigan first.
Yeah, but.
So, yes, and so we went to Flavorson the other day and I kind of looked at their expansion, but now that I've got the tax bills out to the printer and I can kind of backtrack now and go, okay, I have a couple of weeks, I wanna get with legal and have them do or work with me to kind of come up with a questionnaire that is not specific but general for all IFT
How many
approvals?
IFTs do you think we have?
8?
Oh, I mean, I'd just pick up the
Six.
phone and
Six.
call.
Well, but Southwest we had this agreement and Southwest Michigan first committed to gathering that information. There's
Don't
no
ever
reason.
get the information.
They're right, but we don't need to do double work, we just need to request the information. I mean, we have that entity that their whole mission is about like economic growth, right? And I think they can do that job for us, at the very least. We pay them $500 a year as a membership for them to do that kind of
So
work.
the thought was something that's not going way out of our way or way out of my way, but visit the facility with an appointment once a
Right.
year and say, look, here's
I
me.
think that's good.
If I can help you any way I can, let us know. But I've got
Like
these.
grab some gloves and a hat, I don't know what they're doing.
I've got these
The
questions
employees
for
you
you,
promised.
they're standard for all IFT facilities. You know, like, what is your employee count this year today? what is your facility square footage? What is blah, blah, blah? Do you have any questions that we need to answer for you? It's just a visit.
That'll be good. I'll be interested to know what comes of that conversation with legal, to know like what possibilities we
Well,
have.
if there's only 6, that's not a huge mountain to
I think it
climb.
was 8.
So it's 6, there was
Oh, okay.
4,
It was
and then we
originally,
approved,
she changed it.
and then we approved 2 recently,
Already.
so 6.
Okay.
And Faraday, I won't have to be at for
I
probably
think
a year
it's
or
really
two
good
because
for
they haven't even started to build
accountability.
yet.
I mean,
Yeah.
we could time that with our budget season, for example, check in with IFTs and
Please
measure
provide a
their-
report of all IFTs. That's what I
Yeah.
would like as a board member. I don't care how you get it, but I would like a report of all the IFTs.
Yeah, we
Well,
do
and it
need
was-
the information.
And it was just my thought, because as we're reviewing these, like, how many times have we said, well, what is their employee status now? What is their square footage now? And
Those were
it's like,
lovely
we don't know.
ambitions. How did they execute? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to come in and count your workers, please. Let's go right up to T-shirt Pretty Plus. I'm gonna need to see 21 workers here, please.
Well, so not only
Pulling kids
that,
off the street, putting a hat on them and.
but not only that, but reiteration of these taxes have to be paid on time or you lose your status,
Yeah.
because there
Yeah.
are 2 that do not. And so having me there going, this is not an option, I think will alleviate late tax payment.
If it's late, just pull it.
I don't disagree.
I mean, it was a gift, and it's, our taxpayers are paying it. I mean, you know my feeling on it anyway, so
Yep.
I mean, if they violate a single term of that, they should be fully taxed.
Yep.
And
I
they
don't
won't.
disagree. And so that's why I want to make my face known of like, I'm gonna be calling you if there's an issue. Having
you
said
know-
that, you can also
You
call
know
me.
why they're late? Are they just forgetting to pay their bills?
Nope,
No?
I don't know if have we named this entity? Let's
No.
not-
No, we
Let's
don't.
not do that.
no, I'm
No,
not.
we're not naming any, no.
I'm not naming anybody, but there is one that I am convinced is intentional. The person will bring in the check, for example, February 20th, when they were due to February 14th for half the amount of the tax that's due, and run out the door, literally. Like, there you go, throw it on the counter,
That's
run
such
out the
weird
door.
behavior. Okay.
And so like that, I don't have, I wanna be more involved, so I can then call that person and go, what was that?
Sounds like you need to get some running shoes.
I'm right.
Recess.
Well, I started that all just because I
Violate
remember you
term.
saying that that was something
Yeah.
you were going to, that you were interested in, and I think everybody agreed that that's a
Yeah.
great idea.
Yep.
But I didn't see it listed here, and I wanted
I
to make sure.
forgot.
That's okay. But I wanted to make
It's
sure you
not
had-
off
that it was
my
something
mind,
that
I
you're
just
gonna do.
forgot to put on the
It's something
paper.
that we
We
could
would
put
appreciate it.
on the budget season calendar, just put a line, you know.
Every year?
Every year is check in with IFTs and monitor progress or whatever.
Dude, an IFT score would be so helpful.
Score?
Yeah, like what is it costing us? What did we
Like one
get
out
for
of-
it? Like just try to represent the value of why we did it in some, some
So
numerical
would you
way.
want that like year end, or would you want that in an AVG, or would you?
I like it when we're doing this budget
Well,
stuff.
I think a compliance report, I mean, yes, the benefit, but a check that they were compliant, I mean,
Right.
if they're coming in late, the next day they should have a full tax bill. You got a gift from our taxpayers, follow the rules, period, done. And I'm rather
So
passionate
this
about that.
particular one is finished in 2025?
Okay, we're getting closer to naming this entity, so let's
No,
not do that.
there's a few, but this one's gonna be done in 2025, and so if it is presented back to the board for renewal, I will highly object.
All right. I have to go to the bathroom.
Good discussion.
All right, do we have any other questions for the treasurer?
I don't have a question, just a quick comment on
All right, I can hold
the
it.
safe.
Okay.
I may actually be able to get us a safe at no cost, just because we do a lot of closings and consolidations, and generally, I mean, these safes are very heavy, and we don't pay to have them removed, they're just sold for property, so it could get us,
Perfect size, Chris.
but if I do, do we have the means to move it?
We have a
figure it
pickup
out.
truck?
I got a truck.
I mean, I guess it
anybody
would
that can
probably
put it
have
in
the
it.
college humps.
But that's what we could do, though. We could, if we couldn't do it internally, we could certainly hire
Hire
somebody
somebody.
to, I mean,
Okay,
$100 they're
because
gonna.
I feel pretty confident that I mean, let me know what you want, I can get
Yeah.
you small, I can get you large, I can get you a walk-in vault if you want it, but I don't know how we get that here.
The only thing that I would request is that we just run that by Jim to make sure that we can do that.
And I need to run it through, obviously, my internal policy too, but, you know,
But if that's a possibility, that'd be awesome.
possibly doable, we would just need to transport it.
Well, even
Plus,
if-
it's recycling and
It would have to be, I mean, a gift to the township would be great, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't be compensated.
purchase,
It could be, a purchase too. Like, they might say we can't give it, who knows, but.
Take it for $2.
maybe we'll pay it right. I was that old $1 deed transfer.
I will look into that, but if you can like give me an idea of what size you're looking for,
And her, she's like bigger the better. She
Or
wants
one
to
that I could like squat and
step
hide in.
into, yeah.
No, so the ones that I have quoted, so the drawers, we measured their drawers, the 15.5 by 11 deep. And we want 2 of them, but we have
some that are like, it's like one unit, but it's got like our
we
telephones
okay
would
if I
go in them,
adjourn
so
this
you have
meeting?
separate spin dials, like you have
If you
3 or
adjourn, we
4
can't talk about
compartments in
anything
it.
budget related.
So the other thing is, I don't want it to be able to be
Which would be
picked up
this. Or we all have to
by
walk out.
somebody and walked out with.
Where half of us
Which
have
is
to
why I'm
walk
saying,
out.
yeah, you would need to
Put
transport.
earplugs in.
Like this high and this wide.
Okay, let me see what I can
That's
find.
just the absence
You're
of
gonna wanna,
form.
I don't know where you
Like,
work, so
call
I
the
don't know
roll.
what the distance.
I never do that either.
Huh? Yeah, but I've got
they're
like
tricks
60
of the
branches,
Right,
so
so-
territory.
So I don't know that we wanna
Leaving the,
pay
they've
for
got,
transport for somewhere that's like
yeah.
course you
Midland
were.
or something like that, it would need to
I wanted
probably
to
be.
do that so bad when I.
But the other thing I can
They
think of
just
off the top of
closed
my head.
downtown
I didn't
Kalamazoo.
even know it existed.
I'm trying to remember which safe we've got in there, but let me take a look.
We're gonna wanna make sure that we have all of the keys or everything
Well, of
too,
course,
cause
yeah.
if there's a key missing, that's not probably great.
Most of them are spin dials,
Okay.
put codes in, so, yeah, let me look at, downtown Kalamazoo and see if we can.
Plus, I'll shoot you the 2 links of the 2 that I found to get those
I know.
between prices for, so you can see those.
Yeah.
Some of them are really, really beautiful. All right, is there any other items for discussion this evening? All right. At this point, I will adjourn this meeting. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Hear ye, hear ye.
Still took 35 minutes, Dusty.
I never heard of it.